Well, this is going to be a fun one. Hopefully relatively brief, but I might get off on a tangent. Anyways, so what is this about? Well, it's quite simple. I'm going to be discussing the importance of defining terms in a glossary in the context of writing a TTRPG, and why you, even if you're doing homebrew, need to actually pay attention to what words mean when you use words to describe things. I'm going to use examples from the TV show Thundarr the Barbarian because it's something that I have a high level of familiarity with and, makes it easy to talk about. And for the first example, we have magic. As you can see, there is a variety of categories of things related to magic in Thundarr the Barbarian. I'm not going to read this entire article. I wrote several pages talking about this. And the issue with this is that it's a very, very nebulous concept as defined in Thundarr the Barbarian. You have people with what are clearly innate abilities that are literally doing nothing more than an effort of will, doing magic, that they're seemingly born with. And then you have people using magic wands to do magic that they are powerless without. Is that the same force? Is it two different ways of tapping into the same kind of energy? Or is it a completely different ability altogether? I genuinely lean towards the other one because when you look into it, while there is a certain level of overlap between using technology as weaponry and using innate abilities, because, the biggest example here is Octagon. Octagon is a cyborg. Octagon uses an external power source to give him the abilities of a wizard. He does seemingly have power even without the external power source, but it's not really clear if that's actually an innate ability or if it's just a smaller power source embedded in his cybernetics. And that's just one example. It's like there's several different examples in the show of characters who use an external power source. And honestly, there's not actually that many characters we know beyond a shadow of a doubt are cyborgs. And there's characters in the show we know are cyborgs that aren't actually magic users. So, being a cyborg isn't tied to being a magic user. It's just that some characters in the show are cyborgs, some aren't. Anyway, so there's a lot of beings with innate power, not all of which are actually called wizards. This is an interesting one because, the Stalker is a space monster. It's not even human. But it has abilities that are very similar to what you would think of as magic in the context of Thundarr the Barbarian. Like, one of the tricks it does is very similar to the animation spell that Ariel uses several times on various things, and that Gemini used on the Statue of Liberty. Envelops a target in an aura of magic, and then the target comes to life and does whatever the person who cast animation wills it to do. I mean, Ariel used it to end her duel with the Abyss Wizard by causing the Abyss Wizard's chair to come to life and grab him in a bear hug. Very versatile ability in the show. And it's something the Stalker from the Stars could do, despite being a space monster. Anyway, minor tangent aside, it's like that's an example of beings who are willing things to happen and just channeling magic to do as they want and not using tech to do it. They're not pushing a button on a magic wand and then the wand doing it for them. No, it's their power, their will. Like Gemini and Octagon, they didn't use magic wands. They were cyborgs. Gemini's powers, though, were seemingly innate. Why he's a cyborg, no one has any idea. His past is never talked about. He's just this wizard overlord who, does stuff. Anyway, but cyborg is not a, shall we say, game term for this setting. Wizard is. What exactly the word wizard means, it has a connotation to it. Someone who uses their power as an influence to dominate those around them. Because wizard has the connotation of someone who controls territory. Like, it's mentioned that I hear it's like titles like witch, sorcerer, wizard. What it says here is that wizard seems to be for anyone who is potent. Someone like Vashtar, Gemini, who has their own citadel, their army, and controls a region of territory. That's the key thing with wizards. Like, the most badass wizard that we actually saw the team go up against was Argoth. Why was Argoth so impressive? He not only had an army, he had more than one army. He had a giant citadel the size of an entire city. And he also had a fleet of ships that he could have his army fly around in. That was some impressive power. And of course, there's the fact that no one in the hero team has the ability to actually go toe-to-toe with the guy and even have a tiny chance of winning one-on-one. Yeah, he's that badass. But that is the sort of thing that defines a wizard in this setting. And I know I didn't go into that here, but one of the things that's notable about Sorcerer is that while this does actually get used for guys like Argoth, Sorcerer is seemingly a relation to the fact that someone has internal power. Argoth, Ariel, Cersei, Crom, Merlik, all of them are people that had internal power. Granted, Argoth is a rather hideous-looking, mutated humanoid, but, he's not channeling power from technology in his fortress. He's wielding what just comes naturally to him. And, his abilities are rather strange even for wizards, quite frankly, but terrifyingly potent. Like, seriously, how many times have you seen someone shrug off having a building fall on them? Yeah, that guy did it. Yeah. Anyways, though, see, this is where it comes in handy to have actual proper definitions, though, is because in the show you're kind of left to guess what the terms mean. And I compiled this article by literally spending years pondering the subject, rewatching episodes several times. I've seen the entire series at least a dozen times. Oh yeah, witch is another one. Which I don't know what exactly defines a witch, because the fact that one, it's almost never used. There's only two characters it actually gets used to refer to, one of whom, Ariel, is like, no, I'm not a witch. And the other one is Cersei, who is mean. Even for the bad guys in this show, Cersei is mean. I mean, I was talking about how much of a badass Argoth is. Argoth is relatively nice for a bad guy. I mean, you can say that he's evil, but he's very much lawful evil. He's the overlord of a city. He rules his city. Okay, he rules it with an iron fist probably, but he has very, very carefully thought out system of governance that has the city moving along smoothly. He's not just like doing random crap. No, he thinks through everything he does. Cersei, not so much. Cersei lives in a stereotypical witch hut. She has minions that are people that she enchanted and don't serve her willingly. Argoth has a mutant army who actually wants to be his servants because they get to live in his citadel as long as they do what he tells them to, and they're fine with that. Being Argoth's servants means they have a life of relative comfort and luxury. For a post-apocalyptic wasteland, anyways. And, again, witch. The only character that the term was ever definitively applied to who actually claimed it was Cersei. And what made Cersei unique is the fact that she had a habit of using her power to change people. Like turning people into giant mutated toad things. Hypnotizing people with her powers. Granted, Cersei's not the only one who does that one. But the whole, like, turning people into monsters thing, that is something you see incredibly rarely in this show. And one of the other things about Cersei is that Cersei was said to have been banished by the Council of Wizards. Yeah, you know how Thundarr does that thing? Is like, he talks about the evil wizards. Yeah, those guys banished Cersei. Yeah, so I would categorize Cersei as chaotic evil because her domain is a hellhole. Not because she intentionally trashed the place, but because of the fact that there is nothing going on that actually, shall we say, improves the place or keeps it from falling down. It's just like slowly falling down around her. Because of the fact that she made it so no one is able to actually fix anything. Anyways, so if that's what defines a witch, sorcery, enchanted items. Yeah, this is one of those things I was alluding to earlier. Magical relics. Like, the sun sword counts as a magical relic. It's not clear whether it's, technology or magic in the sense that most people would think of it. But, whatever. It is actually one of the items that Yando tried to use in order to become a wizard. Because Yando was an ordinary chap who his goal in life was to become a wizard. He had a handful of bodyguards who worked for him. He was trying to annex a small town as his personal fiefdom, and he got stopped from doing so. But he was building up a power base. He had no innate abilities, though. He used technology for all of his combat abilities, or, mutant bodyguards. He had several of those. But it was the power base that, really defined Yando's scheming to be a wizard. Which, again, is one of those things that's like, so what does the term wizard really mean in the context of Thundarr the Barbarian? It seems to be someone who is a warlord who uses magic as a way of securing their place in the world. Of course, I've said the word several times, but not pondered it yet. And that word would be barbarian. See, yeah, the TV show is called Thundarr the Barbarian. How does it define barbarian, though? Well, as a general rule, the term is never touched. Barbarian is sometimes used in a derisive way by the wizard characters in the show. However, it's never defined. One notable example is Mindok. Mindok is one of those guys who is like the big evil kind of wizard. The guy has this huge fortress. It is not a fortress that you can just walk up to. You try to walk into Mindok's fortress, you'll probably die. Ariel and Thundarr had to fight their way in. And it wasn't easy even for them. And they get inside, get greeted by Mindok, and stuck in a force bubble because Mindok is that powerful. Yeah. That aside, though, barbarians are referred to by Mindok as... Well, he doesn't actually explain what he thinks about barbarians either. Like I said, there's a recurring theme. No one explains what the word barbarian means. They just use the word. And Mindok had a particularly derisive tone in his voice when he said the word. You're a barbarian! And the only thing that we really have to go on here is that barbarians are people who don't buy into the whole, like, wizard overlords thing. Now, again, that's something that's not well explained. Because there's not a whole lot of characters that I can think of in the show that are actually identified as being barbarians. There's a whole bunch of people who are like random fighters who are like, warriors of considerable skill. Most of them aren't called barbarians. I can think of one guy who might be missing from this list here, who arguably could be considered to be a barbarian, but he's not even all that interesting. He was like the leader of a village that got attacked. It's like, wait, why would the leader of the village be called a barbarian? Ooh, yeah, that's an interesting question. Because Chief Ograt was called a barbarian. Ograt is a monk and the chief of a monk village. And it's one of those things where like, wait, but how does that make him a barbarian? Well, again, we don't know. It's a poorly defined term, but like one of the things about this that's interesting is that while there are magic users who work with barbarians, literally everyone on this list has worked with one or more magic users. Shara is an example of an in-universe hero team that isn't the main cast. Shara and Merlik, her sidekick, are, Merlik is a sorcerer. And, the two of them hang out together as a adventuring party. Cinda. Okay, at the beginning of the episode that Cinda was in, Cinda was a hermit living alone in a canyon. And while she did end up working with several magic users in that episode, she didn't know them before the episode started. May have never even heard of them, honestly. Especially true of Valerie Storm, because Valerie Storm is the subject of a temporal paradox that was never properly resolved in the episode, and is one of the most head-scratching things that ever came up in Thundarr the Barbarian. Anyways, Aside from the origin about Valerie Storm being confusing, Cinda has no reason to have met Valerie Storm at all. Not even from the same time period. The other one of that group, though, Maya, the element shifter. Again, what's an element shifter? She's the only one ever seen in the show, and it seems as if it's being played off as being some kind of like a high-powered mutant. A mutant with abilities that are beyond what ordinary mutants are capable of, but not magic in the sense we normally think of, because her powers only affect herself. She doesn't have the ability to, say, fire an energy beam at someone and just zap them unconscious. No. That's not how Maya's powers work. But her abilities do resemble magic. It's just that she's changing her physical body in order to do those feats, not the world around her. It's rather peculiar. The only time that a character like that was seen in the show. Although, again, some of the things that Maya does are similar to things that wizards do, because one of Maya's tricks was turning herself into a cloud of gas in order to quickly relocate herself. Instead of walking or flying in the more mundane sense, she would turn into a cloud of gas, just go whoosh, and then turn back into a human form somewhere else. Argoth also did that. Argoth used it as a substitute for teleportation. So again, it's something very, very similar to magic, but she didn't have the ability to exert magic on the world around her, just herself. Again, unique character. Anyway, again, goes back to the whole of, like, they didn't explain what an element shifter is. But that's a bit of a tangent. Barbarians. In the episode with... I don't know. Category. Wizard. Not Merlick. I temporarily blanked on the name. Artemis. Here we are. The Council of Wizards. Again, this is one of those things where it's talked about in the show, but never fully defined. Because there are many wizards that are said to be more important than others. Like, Mindok claimed to be the most powerful of all of the wizards. Yeah, they kicked his butt in episode 2, although they didn't kill him, they just kind of like wrecked his airship, and his airship careened into space with him on board. No one's seen him again, but, we have no reason to actually think he's dead. The Council of Wizards are probably the same guys that banished Cersei. And that's actually something that's kind of impressive in terms of a powerful curse, because it was said that she's been cursed for 500 years. Whoever cursed her did a good job. Again, oh yeah, also, 7 Citadels of Sorcery, Lord Argoth. And oh yeah, also, Queen Diona talking about a group of male wizards. Didn't identify them. Anyway, but barbarians seem to be opposed to the idea of having a council of wizards ruling the world, like an evil version of the United Nations. So that seems to be what defines barbarians, is that barbarians are opposed to the idea of letting wizards rule the world. I know. It's one of those things where, like, it's very non-obvious because of the fact that what you typically think of with the word barbarian is you think of someone like, Kull the Conqueror, or Why am I blanking on that name? Conan. But see, Conan lived as a king for a large part of the stories that he was in. He would, he would take on the role of a warlord, ruling an area, and he didn't rule by the use of magic. He ruled by the use of strength and combat skill, which is kind of sort of the thing with the barbarian characters, is because none of them actually has innate magical abilities. Thundarr, Cinda, and Zogar use what are arguably magical weapons, but they're not weapons that channel their own power. They're weapons with an external power source of indeterminate origin. So, it's like having a lightsaber in Thundarr's case, rather literally. It's not part of him. It's just a weapon he carries around. It's his favorite weapon, but it's one that he knows how to use quite well. But it's not part of who he is, and he's quite capable of fighting without it. It actually does come up in some episodes. But anyway. But yeah, it's like, this is one of those things with this show that at first glance, you look at it, it's like, oh, okay, that's the thing that's there, and you don't really think about it. And then you go back on a second or third watch, and like, wait a second, what did he actually mean when he said that? And then you realize that you can't know because the TV show doesn't have information. Very, very perplexing, but it's a thought-provoking thing more than a frustrating thing to me. Anyways, well, feel free to let me know your thoughts on the matter. I personally find that having definitions like this, you need a definition. To a certain extent, definitions need to be vague because you cannot literally define every conceivable use of a word without knowing ahead of time what all of the potential uses actually are. But I personally think that this particular description is actually wrong. Am I the one who actually wrote that, or is that one of the things Malkadon wrote? Yeah, that was probably Malkadon. I'm not sure. Let's see. No, I wrote that one. I'll probably change it later. Anyway, though, that's gone on long enough. It's a topic that's a basic aspect of game design, I guess you could say. When you use a word in a game, unless you're just using the bog standard dictionary definition, you need to define the term. And when you're writing a TV series, sometimes you need to define the term. And they didn't do that ever, but they only on a few occasions actually gave you reasons to question whether they're using the dictionary definition. Barbarian is definitely one of them, though. Oh, and also wizard, honestly. Like, the closest thing to a standard definition of wizard is a powerful magic user. It's just that some of the wizards in the show actually aren't all that powerful. They're more guys that have a personal fiefdom, and like the Abyss Wizard. I mentioned him earlier. Ariel challenges him to a duel and wins. She just like straight up teleports into his citadel and demands that he give her answers. Fights a duel with him, and then after beating him, he tells her what she wants to know, and she leaves. Notably, Thundarr said, "No wizard is ever nice," in response to Ariel telling him that the Abyss Wizard told him what she wanted to know. Which makes you wonder, it's like, wait a second. What does Thundarr mean by that? No wizard is ever nice. Again, though, when you have guys like Argoth, Gemini, Mindok, who are major league warlords who use their magic powers as a weapon of war, it's understandable that he would think that. And again, we don't actually have a full list of everyone in the Thundarr the Barbarian setting that actually is a wizard, which makes defining the term even harder, but yeah, you see where this is going. At any rate, that has gone on long enough. I might revisit this topic in the future, but that's enough thinking about the topic for now, I suppose. Because this is one of those things where, while you can study the topic, while you can make informed opinions regarding the topic, you cannot say that you know, because quite frankly, I'm not entirely sure that the people who wrote this can even give you a definitive answer, because there's more than one of them, and I'm not entirely sure they had the same idea. Oh well. Well, that's my thoughts. Feel free to let me know in the comments what yours are.